Hey World Civ students, it's Miss Hall here with a video about Italian unification. Now, yesterday you looked at how Germany unified, and this video is going to go along with the reading to sort of help further explain unification in Italy. Alright, there are three main goals. By the end of this video, you should be able to identify the obstacles to Italian unification, why it was difficult for Italy to unify. You should be able to explain how Italy did become a unified nation. If you look at the pictures down here at the bottom, you'll see sort of the three steps of unification, and then you should be able to describe the struggles that Italy faced as a new nation. So first, let's talk about some of the obstacles that Italy faced when they decided to make efforts to unification. The first was that Italy had not been a unified nation for a really long time, not since early Roman times. It was divided up into various regions, and it had been frequently controlled by outside rulers as well as regional and local princes, and people were really loyal to their regions, not necessarily to their nations. You know, people of Florence considered themselves Tuscans, and people from Venice were Venetians, and the people of Naples considered themselves Neapolitans, which, by the way, is a delicious ice cream. But so there wasn't really this national loyalty that other places had. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't those out there that were trying to unify Italy, but they were for the most part ignored. And at the Congress of Vienna, when there was sort of this opportunity, the Congress of Vienna basically ignored Italy as a nation and divided it up, giving Austria control of a lot of northern Italy and Habsburg rulers other parts of Italy. And so it was pretty much divided up. Now, of course, in the face of that, there were nationalist rebels like Mazzini who tried to unify, but for the most part, they were ineffective against strong nations like Austria. Pictured here, you see Giuseppe Mazzini, who was the leader of a sort of secret society known as Young Italy, and their goal was to try to make Italy one free, independent, and republican nation. And he set up a revolutionary republic in Rome, but it was quickly toppled by French forces. They were just no match for these stronger nations. So rebels like Mazzini, even though they were not successful, they did plant seeds of nationalism that grew in leaders like Victor Emmanuel II. Emmanuel was the leader of the Kingdom of Sardinia, and he wanted to add other states to his kingdom. He wanted to increase his power by uniting some of the Italian states. And so he appointed as prime minister Count Camillo Cavour. And Cavour was a very savvy leader. And he had the idea that the first thing they needed to do was to improve Sardinia's economy. And so they really worked to build up Sardinia's economy and make Sardinia a power player in the economy. And that sort of gave them a position to join the British and the French in the Crimean War in 1855. And so through the alliances that they made with Britain and France in the Crimean War, they were able to sort of broker a secret deal with Napoleon III of France to ally against Austria, such that when a year later Sardinia goes to war with Austria, the French have their back, and they manage in 1859 to defeat Austria and to regain that territory in northern Italy. After that, Cavour set his sights on the south, and he partnered with the nationalist Giuseppe Garibaldi and his group of red shirts. That's what his group was called. And together they were able to win control of Sicily and Naples. And it wasn't quite that easy. Garibaldi took those over, but then granted them back to Victor Emmanuel. And in 1861, Victor Emmanuel II was crowned king of the first unified Italy. Now, this unity was not totally complete. There were still the area of Venetia around Venice and Rome that remained independent. However, shortly after that, there was a deal negotiated that acquired Venice, and we'll talk a little bit in the next section about what happened with Rome. Like all young nations, New Italy faced a host of different problems. They continued to have regional rivalries and to struggle to really find a national identity and national unity. The biggest difference was, of course, between the North and the South. The North was richer and had more cities, and they were sort of a center of business and culture. The South was more rural and poor. Another major challenge that Italy was facing was hostility between the new Italian state and the Roman Catholic Church. As Italian nationalists unified Italy, the Papal States had lost their independence. Now, today, only one of those papal states exists, the Vatican City. And Vatican City is located in Rome, but it is actually very small. It's what you see pictured here. It's the world's smallest and least populated nation. It's just over 108 acres, and it's basically home to the Pope and to some of the papal leaders. And it's all that remains of the papal states that existed before unification. So, of course, the Pope's not necessarily a big fan of this. They saw themselves as sort of being held hostage in Vatican City and as prisoners. And they urged Italian Catholics, which was basically all Italians, not to cooperate with the new national government. Italy, under Emmanuel II, was still a monarchy, and so another problem that they faced was one that we've seen in other nations where there's a monarchy in charge. There were people that wanted to rebel against that monarchy. Socialists organized strikes, and anarchists, or people who wanted to abolish all government, turned to sabotage and violence. And so slowly the monarchy began to grant vote to more people and to pass laws to sort of be a little less conservative, and that appeased the people for the most part. I mean, Italy also faced challenges that we've seen in all modernizing nations. The industrialization led to overcrowding and urbanization, people moving into the cities, and peasants that came in to try to find jobs, and that led to a shortage of food, and a lot of the things that we saw in the other nations we talked about when we were talking about industrialization. Now, even though it brought a lot of turmoil to Italy, there were also a lot of strengths that it brought to Italy. By 1914, Italy was significantly better off than it had been in 1861. Now, that brings us to the end of this video on Italian unification. As always, let your teacher know if you have any questions and be ready for a quiz.